All right, what's going on, guys? Zach here, of course. Listen, it's 1:06 in the morning. I'm doing this in my living room. You can see the funky background. Romeo's right there. So can't be too loud. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, but the time is going to change, and it will be 1 o'clock again in an hour. So, way too hopped up after that World Series game to where I was like, you know what? Let's just knock out this Dynasty till death midseason review. I owe this to you guys. I wasn't able to be there last weekend. I feel super guilty about it. Just life gets in the way sometimes. So, really, really sucks. Really feel bad about it. But I wanted to make it up to you guys by doing a Dynasty till death midseason review. So let's freaking do it. Now, a couple things. Obviously, this is a very informal recording, so bear with me. I'll be staring at the computer. I'll be staring at my phone. The Sleeper desktop AI, or I should say UI user interface, is ridiculous. So I'm going to have this up so you guys can see it, but I'll be looking at my phone really to kind of navigate through the teams, so on and so forth. Cool. All right, so we have... how many weeks we have left? 6 weeks left. Obviously, tomorrow will be one of those weeks. So we'll have 5 weeks after that. Trade deadline is approaching really quickly, which is something we'll talk about here as well. But so far, 4 playoff teams are myself, which I don't want to talk about myself first. Talk about myself later. John, Donnie, and surprisingly, in my opinion, Avery. And then we have your 5th through 12th place teams being Drew, which is another surprise, but is it? We have Jeff, we have Max, and then those teams are tied at 4-4, and then we have a bunch of 3 and 5 teams: Paul, Javi, Justin, Rocco, and Jeff. So I think I'll work my way up from the bottom here, and then I just don't want to talk about myself first. I don't mean to talk about myself last, but we'll just work from the top, from the bottom up, okay? Jeff with a J, in the middle of a rebuild. I got to be honest with you. I like some of the moves that he has made, some of the decisions that he has made to build long-term. He has 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, 2/3, 2/4. I love when a team knows their direction and how they want to get there. There could be another move or two that he could have made, and I'm not. There's nothing in specific I'm talking about there specifically with me whatsoever. But I think there is a possibility to have better positioned himself for this, because it's not a runaway race right now for the 101. Like, Jeff is still. Let me pull up the max PF here. He's ahead by about 40 points. So if any of these teams, right now Jeff is benefiting from Max. I'll throw Justin in here just because of his record. Max, Justin, and more specifically Rocco, and I'm also going to throw Javi in here, just not making an attempt to get the 101. Like, Jeff is benefiting from these teams not making a concerted effort to get the 101. And I'm not knocking you for it. I'm just saying this is one of the only leagues where there are not multiple people trying to get the 101, which is a testament to where we are as a league, but also the inability for some owners to position themselves to get the 101. And I would say right now it looks like a runaway Jeremiah Love could change, right? Could maybe be Cardinal Tate, could maybe be Jordan Tyson. There's a couple other guys that it could be, but those 3 names are, for the most part, the 3 we'll be talking about, more specifically Jeremiah Love. And Jeff is in the driver's seat for that 101. He's positioned himself to be, but B, nobody's really challenging him. A lot of these teams are close just because they haven't been good. It's not like they're trying to lose. None of these teams, Max, Justin, Rocco, or Javi, are trying to lose. That's the thing. They're trying to win, and for one reason or another, they're not. I'll give Max a pass. Justin's been destroyed by injuries, but there's something to be talked about there without his lack of an insurance plan. But yeah, Jeff's team is. I really like what Jeff has done in being able to put himself in pole position for the 101, but also like having a really interesting team, like a good nucleus of building blocks. He's got Drake May, he's got Roma Dunze, he's got JSN, both from the Aston Genty trade, which I was dead wrong. I was dead wrong that I was so mad at Jeff when that trade happened. Didn't voice it. Just so you guys, oh, you always say something. Nope, I did not. I did not. Um, Kyle Pitts, BTJ. He's got Trevor Lawrence. Some couple nice pieces that could turn into things. Jaden Reed, Jalen Coker, Elijah Arroyo. Like he's got pieces to build around. Trey Benson. And then you add just the flurry of draft picks. It'll be interesting to see what Jeff does if he does end up getting 101. Will he keep that 101 or will he make a move to like keep stockpiling assets as he rebuilds this team? I think Jeff has learned a good lesson from not having a dynasty approach in the past, and I just love the trajectory that he's on. Again, I think there's a couple of things that you could do now and in the future to really position yourself. Like the way I envision my teams in Dynasty is like a true Dynasty aspect. I want to be in playoff contention for 5 or 10 years. That's what I did in my rebuild a couple years ago. I saw how it went last year. I made some moves to tinker with it again. And I think Jeff is doing that. Jeff is on his way to really positioning himself to be a player in the Dynasty till death playoffs for a long time to come. So good job, Jeff. Then we got Rocco here at the bottom. Let's see if I can maneuver. This UI is the worst. So we've got Rocco here at the second to the bottom in the standings, if I'm not mistaken. 3 and 5. Obviously, he really suffered from the Lamar Jackson injury. He's also second to last in max PF, although he only holds that lead. Like he's 13 points away from being 104. It would not surprise me after this week if Rocco is in the 104 because Lamar Jackson is back. Rocco fleeced me on the Adonai Mitchell trade, which Jeff with a G was just like robbery, and ended up not being that way. But yeah, he gets Lamar Jackson back. Obviously a phenomenal draft pick with Tyler Warren last year, also drafting Oronde Gadsden. Do you need 2 tight ends and a half point? Oh, there goes my camera. That's going to happen sometimes, guys. Do you need 2 tight ends in a half point PPR non-tight end premium, or could you weaponize one of those tight ends either before the trade deadline or in the offseason at some point? Rocco also had a really good draft last year with Quinshawn Judkins and Tyler Warren in the first round. For somebody who's so good at drafting, like Rocco just doesn't position himself to draft. Like he just takes what he's given and doesn't put a lot of effort into getting like a better draft pick. So I mean, it is what it is at this point with Rocco. He's also suffered from the Malik Neighbors injury, but look, Rocco has a chance again to position himself for the 101. That's potentially Jeremiah Love, now Malik Neighbors, Lamar Jackson, Quinshawn Judkins, Tyler Warren. I mean, that is a stud-filled starting lineup, to say the least. Obviously, there's still more starting positions to be addressed, and of course, depth, which is really hurting some teams right now. But it is what it is with Rocco at this point, right? The thing about sustaining injuries in Dynasty, and more specifically in our league that is hyper competitive, is doing nothing when you have injuries really kind of just leaves you in the middle. Like if you have injuries and you don't use those players, you weaponize those players to get other players to help you compete, or okay, I've suffered some injuries, let's call it a season, let's sell off the pieces that aren't long-term pieces and build towards the next year. If you don't do either one of those things, for lack of a better term, you're twiddling your dick in this league. Like you're doing absolutely nothing. And so unfortunately, I've come to adore Rocco lately. Excuse me. But it is what it is with him. Like, I would not be surprised if this weekend, if he has 104 and is kind of creeping up towards that 105 because he scored too many points. And that's just the position you do when you don't position yourself for a better draft pick. So moving on to Justin, I don't need to spend a lot of time on Justin. Justin has been two things have really affected Justin: injuries to some of his studs, and they're not like long-term injuries, but they've held out some of his players for weeks at this point. We're talking more specifically about Bucky Irving and, of course, Brock Bowers. He's also had, situations here with Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley. I don't think Matthew Golden has worked out as well as he thought he was going to. And even having the injury to Brock Bowers, then Brenton Strange went on IR. So, just double whammy to the tight end position. Juwan Jennings has been in and out of the lineup. So just a lot of injuries really affecting Justin. But just Justin not having a whole lot of depth on the bench, which, you look at his bench right now: Tyquan Thornton, Calvin Austin, Darius Slayton. Troy Franklin has been pretty good the last few weeks. But, I think also the hit that Ladd McConkey's taken in production has really affected Justin as well. Justin last year, he drafted so well, and those guys that carried him throughout the year, for the most part, were not injured throughout the playoffs. Of course, he suffered, certain injuries here and there, but Saquon healthy, Bucky healthy, Ladd healthy, Bowers healthy for the majority of the season last year, Jared Goff healthy. So the big horses of his lineup were not injured, so didn't need a whole lot of depth last year. Whereas this year, he has gotten just bit by the injury bug so bad, and he doesn't really have the depth to address that. Now, Justin, interestingly enough, does have quite a bit of draft capital: 2 firsts, his own and John's, second, and 3 thirds and a fifth. So 6-7 draft picks there to maybe address some of that depth or continue to just stockpile horses that he can continue to start. So not too worried about Justin long term. He's in a great position with the nucleus of his team, and also having a lot of draft picks to address his team next year. And Justin's a great owner. Justin's just a phenomenal owner. I wish I had Justin in all my leagues because he's responsive, he's responsible, he's courteous, he's nice, he's a pleasure, and he's a winner. And he knows how to turn a bad team into a good team. And there's not much more to say about Justin there, because I think his team is just fine. There's not a whole lot to say there. One more note about Justin's team. Right now, he has the 103. I would probably say after this week, he will. Excuse me, the Coke Zero is running through me. I think if Rocco keeps the roster as is, Justin will have a higher draft pick than Rocco at the end of the day. Justin's pieces are coming back too. Bowers coming back, Bucky's coming back, Saquon's should be healthy, Breece probably going to get traded to a better team. So we'll see, but not a whole lot to like on Justin's bench right now, and that's okay. I think Justin's in a phenomenal position moving forward. So, all right, let's move on to Max. Max. First and foremost, you've been a welcome addition to the league. Thank you so much for taking on the team, and I got nothing bad to say about Max whatsoever. Wish we could make a trade, but that's what happens sometimes. No big deal. He's responsive, and that's all I've ever asked. That's all I've ever said I want someone to be. And so for that reason, I got no complaints about you, Max. 3 wins in a row for Max, which is weird because he has the second fewest points scored and third fewest points against in the league. So a little fortuitous with the schedule the last few weeks. And that's okay. You play who's on your schedule. Kamani Vidal really coming on the last few weeks for Max. CD coming back healthy. But outside of the top part of your roster, man, it's rough right now. And that's okay. You took over a dog water team with a couple nice pieces in Bijan and CD. You can weaponize those to turn those into multiple assets, or you can hang on to them and build around them. There's nothing wrong with that. Chase Brown, I mean, that's not a piece I want to build around, but that's a piece you can certainly keep. Drafting T-Mac and Travis Hunter, who I was Really interested in the ascension of Travis Hunter, who's unfortunately on the IR, but luckily it's nothing long term. And then you look at Max's draft picks, only one first, his own second, a third, and 3/4. So, I wish I totally get like, hey, I'm going to come in here and compete, and that's fine. This league is one of the most competitive leagues that I have. Some really, really, really smart owners. And I think, where you came out with your team, I would have liked to see you immediately say, hey, I'm going in for 2026. And that's not to say I wish you sold Bijan or CD. That's not what I'm saying. I just wish somehow you had acquired more draft capital, and there's plenty of time to do that. However, you are 4-4, right outside the playoff picture. Who knows what happens? The beauty of this league is it's a 4-team playoff, so only truly the best will make the playoffs. So Max, he's done a really good job at just addressing that team, like not making silly trades. I know he made the Roma Dunze trade, and he got the 103 for that. And got Tedero McMillan, which is fine. Like, I got no problem with that trade whatsoever. So if that's how it worked out, even if it was Travis Hunter, I got no problem with that trade. So I think Travis Hunter will be fine in the long term. He was coming around to be the wide receiver 1 on that team as of a couple of weeks ago. So, but yeah, I mean, Max is kind of just floating around in the ether of Dynasty till death right now. And look, it's not even, he hasn't even been in the league for 1 full year yet. Let's give him some time to get his feet wet, figure out the league, see what he wants to do. But so far, so good. You got a couple pieces here that maybe you can move, maybe a Demont, keeping Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott in a 1 quarterback league. You could, or you could weaponize one of those. Dallas Goedert. You've got Harold Fannin, another great draft pick. So do you need Goddard? Can you don't need 4. What do you have, 4 tight ends on your roster? Taysom Hill, Mason Taylor, Harold Fannin, Dallas Goedert. Can you weaponize Dallas Goedert in one way? I'd like to see Max get some more draft capital here in the upcoming weeks as we get closer to the trade deadline. But Max is doing a great job with his team so far. 4-4, 3 wins in a row, and somebody that I do not want to face because he's got some horses on that team. So that's the bottom 4th of the league right now. At least in Max PF. I'm not sure how it is in the standings. Actually, no, Max is not. Actually, you got the list right here in front of you. I'm looking at Max PF on my phone, but that's okay that we talked about Max. He's 4th lowest in Max PF. Let's go to Javi. Javi is very much in the same boat as Rocco. No surprise there. Can Javi make the playoffs? Maybe. I just think that Javi needs... I want to say this nicely. Javi needs to stop fucking around and just being in the middle. Like, Javi, I've said this so many times, is the Miami Dolphins of Dynasty till death. He's good enough to not be bad enough to get a high draft pick, but he's bad enough to not be good enough to win in the playoffs. And that is just the worst place to be in Dynasty. And since I've been in Dynasty till death, that is where Javi has lived, in the middle. And I just don't know why you want to be there, why you want to stay there. This has nothing to do with the DeAndre Swift trade that I was trying to get from you this week. This is just like a state of the union. Let's look at your team in the middle of the year. You're 3-5. You don't really have a whole bunch of draft picks outside of your own. Like, this is a team that you need to do one of 2 things. Either use your draft picks to help you get better, or get some more draft picks for next year, and position yourself for that number 1 pick to try and get as high as a pick as you can, because you keep getting in the middle of the first round and you're not getting pieces that like help you long term. Zay Flowers, Sky Moore, Xavier Worthy's been okay. Like, you're getting these nice players, but you're not getting these game changers. And again, I want to say this politely, I don't think you do a lot of scouting. So you can't rely on your ability to get guys in the second, third, and fourth rounds. If you get lucky, sure, but I hope I'm not being too offensive here because that's not what I'm trying to do. But Javi just rides the fence, and he's really good at it, and he's doing it again this year. He's 3-5. You can sit here and talk about luck all you want. What you are trying to do in Dynasty fantasy football is position yourself in the long term for success and the short term for success. And Javi does a great job at positioning himself for the short term success, but not the long term success. And he just continues to just ride this wave of going absolutely nowhere. And that's just like right now, he is 60, 70 points ahead of the 104. So like Javi's firmly entrenched in that 105 to probably, I mean, him and 14 points separate him from 107. So that was the joke I made before the season, like 106, Javi, here you go. And you're right back in this position again to just be in the middle of the draft order and do this whole cycle again. So don't want to be too harsh or too mean, but you haven't positioned yourself in the top third of the league with the max PF. Like I said, you're 70 points away from 104 with 6 weeks to go. I mean, you'd have to shed some insane points, and that's not what I'm recommending because I like you don't trade Justin Jefferson to get in position for 101. Like you don't do that. But you're just kind of riding the wave of nowhere. And so that's where Javi is right now, 3-5, lost 2 in a row. I know he's going to blame it on luck because that's what he does. But unfortunately, he can keep doing that and keep paying the $100 fee every year to play. And he's a fun, nice guy. But you're just the Miami Dolphins of DTD right now. You're just kind of going nowhere right now. So would love to see you commit one way or the other. Like I'm not telling you have to go for 101, 102. You can use your draft picks and try and buy some players from Jeff or from maybe Justin or from maybe Max or from highly unlikely Rocco would do it, but try and use your draft picks to elevate your team and get yourself in position to be better because you're just kind of roaming the nether regions of the league. Let's go back here and look at the standings. Who do we got? We talked about Javi. Paul. Wow, Paul's team, 3-5. Didn't see that one coming. And I haven't done a deep dive on Paul's squad yet, so let's look. Okay. This is where it gets interesting. Second most points in the league, second most points against. What are you going to do about that, right? Paul's team is a horse, and Paul's had some bad luck. Like, luck is absolutely a factor in this league. It just is. Like, I mean, in every league, I should say. But it's not the main reason why someone loses, right? Paul has, unfortunately, what's really probably set him back is just the bevy of injuries at the quarterback position, right? Brock Purdy and Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, let's look at his game log real quick. Like one game inside the top 12 for Jaden Daniels, that's not normal. I think that offensive line is really affecting the rest of that team, the wide receiver production, Bill's production, Jaden Daniels' production. The reason he gets so injured is because that offensive line is not blocking for him. Jaden Daniels goes out there and tries to make plays and keeps getting hurt. Like I said, in 5 games this season, Jaden Daniels has one top 12 performance, I should say. Obviously, the Rossi Rice suspension affected him as well. But despite all that, Paul has the second most points in the league, and it just hasn't worked out thus far this year. Obviously, he's had the A.J. Brown issues, the Chris Godwin issues as well. Like, nobody's team is clear of injuries or suspensions or anything like that. It's how do you overcome them? And Paul's put his best foot forward. That's the thing. Like, Paul doesn't have his first-round pick. Paul doesn't have his third-round pick. Does have his second-round pick. Still time to use that. You know, Tajay Spears is coming on. Ramondre Stevenson's been better than we thought. So I think Paul's really just looking to see how the next week or two goes and then make a decision if he wants to sell off some pieces or maybe go in a little bit harder. And because I would say that if Paul gets the record to tie, he will win the tiebreaker because of the points that he has scored. So um, I don't think Paul needs to do anything crazy right now. It's a tough situation where just some things haven't gone your way, Paul. But still time, still time. You see how the next week or two go and make a decision from there where you want to go with this team. But your team is loaded, and I would say that nobody wants to see you in the playoffs right now. So not too worried about you, Paul. Let's just see where you stand in max PF. So yeah, unfortunately, because you have so many points, like Paul has the most max PF in the league. So if he were to not make the playoffs, his pick would be 108, which sucks for me because I have Paul's first. So it is what it is. Let's go to the next team here in the rankings. So that would have been Max. We already talked about Max. Jeff. Ooh, oh boy. All right. Jeff with the G, 4-4, 6 in points, 4 first in points against. So Jeff has had the most points against. However, Jeff has not scored the most points. He's kind of riding in the middle of the pack in this league. And that is where Jeff's team is just so top heavy, right? You look at Jeff's max PF, he's 5th in the league in max PF, meaning if it's not coming from his starters, it's not coming from his bench for the most part. Like he's 5th. He's not 9th in max PF. He's 5th. So that means his bench is still scoring points, but not where you'd like it to be as a potential playoff team. Jeff's a very top-heavy team. Jahmyr Gibbs, Aston Genty, Jamar Chase, Drake London, Marvin Harrison. Just a phenomenal starting lineup, really. Let's just go to the bench here. Yeah, that's really the problem with Jeff is once you get past those names, it gets dicey. Like Theo Johnson at tight end or David Njoku or Cade Otton. You're not starting any of those with confidence any single week. And then in the flex, Kenneth Walker has been crazy disappointing this year. And like who else on Jeff's bench? I'll put it to you this way. And again, I'm trying to offend, but like who on Jeff's bench would you want on your roster? Not a lot. There's not a lot. There's a couple defenses and kickers. I would say Calvin Ridley has been incredibly disappointing this year. But other than that, it's Trey Harris, it's Roman Wilson, it's Justice Hill, it's Jaden Blue, Geno Smith, Van Jefferson, bunch of tight ends, Jalen Lane, Isaiah Bond. Like there's just not a lot of meat on the bone on the bench. And when you need a spot start, you need a bye week fill-in like you did last week. Both you and I needed significant bye week fill-ins last week, Jeff. And then Drake London goes down at the last minute. You just don't have anyone to put in there. And the other thing, we did talk about this in the preseason, is your inability to keep fab. That is killing you, man. It's killing you. Like all these weeks where people are able to get like Kamani Vidal, me with Trey Tucker. Like Trey Tucker be phenomenal flex player to have on your bench. And like you can't bid on any of these guys because you got no fab. And you keep doing that to yourself every year. So Jeff's an interesting team because if his horses can absolutely carry him to a playoff spot. But I think if he's got 2 or 3 guys that are underperforming or 2 or 3 guys that are hurt that really matter to him, Jeff doesn't have anything else to put in place. And Jeff has already moved his 1st round pick, his 2nd round pick, his own 3rd round pick, and his own 4th round pick. He has a 3rd from Paul. But like unless you're trading Marvin Harrison, Drake London, Jamar Chase, Aston Genty, Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe Kenneth Walker, those 5 or 6 players, does anybody really want to trade for Jaden Blue, Roman Wilson, Trey Harris? Not trying to knock your roster. It's just that's where you are, man. And if the horses don't carry you there, then you don't have anything else to help you get there. And that's really the problem with Jeff's roster where it stands right now. So Again, tough to be first in points against, but it's not like Jeff is top 5, top 3 in scoring in this league. He's kind of in the middle of the pack, and that's because he just doesn't have a lot of help off the bench to fill in for injuries or buys, and he's not able to really get anybody off the waivers because he spends all his fab pretty much prior to the season. So we'll see. I mean, I would feel confident and say Jeff's probably just going to ride this thing out, see how the season goes, and then make a decision from there. Maybe he does have a draft pick or two that he can turn into something. I mean, rostering 4 tight ends in a half-point PPR league is weird. Maybe you could do something there. I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in. The thing about Jeff too is like Jeff's never been afraid to make a big move. Like he went for it with the Ashton Genty trade, and I was, me personally, I thought that was really going to work out for him. It hasn't so far. I think Genty will be fine in the long term, but right now I'd rather have JSN and Roma Dunze, especially with your lack of a flex player that you feel confident in and your lack of bench players that you feel confident in moving into your starting lineup. I'd rather have those two pieces than Ashton Genty right now. But I do think long-term Ashton Genty will be fine. And then not to mention, you did trade your own first in that trade as well. So that trade really, really biting you in the butt right now. Let's see where that first lands real quick. Jeff's max PF. So depending on if he's a playoff team or not, 107, 108 right now for Jeff with a J, who owns your first round pick. Let's see if we can move these standings up a little bit. All right, there's Jeff. Let's get to, can we get to the top of this here? I know this is great. Man, this UI is the worst. All right, perfect. There we go. So let's get to the top 5 here. We've got Drew coming in at 5th place here. Drew's 4-4, third most points scored in the league, 8th in points against. Drew's another owner been really bit by the injury bug. Although I will say, when you roster older players, that's sometimes what's going to happen. Like we're looking at Najee Harris, Tank Dell was injured before the season. Tyreek Hill, although you picked up Tyreek Hill, you didn't have Tyreek Hill. James Conner, I'm pretty sure you rostered. Maybe not. I don't know. Can't keep track anymore. There was 1 or 2 older players. Oh, Austin Eckler was the other one. Austin Eckler and Najee Harris were really big hits to your team at the time. And then, that kind of happens when you roster older players. Quentin Johnston, you made a trade for him a couple weeks ago. That's not really working out right now. Don't know what's happening there. But look, Drew's done a really good job at A, staying alive, and B, positioning himself for next year's draft. And that's the difference that some teams in this league don't get. They should look at Drew and they should take notes. And that doesn't mean hedging trades. That's not how you position yourself like Drew, because you don't do it with 4th round picks. You do it with 1st and 2nds. And I have full confidence that if Drew's not a playoff team this year, he'll be back in the discussion next year. Drew's a pretty good drafter, good at weaponizing his draft picks either in the offseason or prior to the season. He's got 2 first-round picks to play with right now, 3 fourth-round picks. We know Drew's a wheeler and dealer, and he'll be ready to wheel and deal as the rest of the season goes and the offseason goes. I mean, and you look at last year, getting Emeka Egbuka has really worked out for him, been one of the better rookies in the NFL right now. Was able to trade for Devonta Smith in the offseason. So, I mean, like you look at Drew's wide receiver room moving forward right now. Let's just take the totality of it. George Pickens, T. Higgins, Quentin Johnston, Xavier Legette, Emeka Egbuka, Devonta Smith, Garrett Wilson, Tank Dell, and then for good measure, we can throw Tyreek Hill in there. I would say there's 5 or 6 names that everybody in Dynasty Till Death would love to have. And obviously, George Pickens, T. Higgins, Emeka Egbuka, Devonta Smith, Garrett Wilson. But, I mean, that is a loaded wide receiver room, and it really gives Drew the flexibility to next year in the draft to maybe position himself for a running back or a tight end. Although he has the tight end 1 in Dynasty right now, Tucker Kraft. although that is very volatile and changes from week to week. I mean, Tucker Kraft could have 3 touchdowns next week or 3 catches. Who the heck knows? So Drew's in a good position to contend for this year, which is surprising after an 0-4 start, but that's kudos to Drew for just keep chugging along, man. And like not just staying put. Drew was 0-4 and made some moves, and now he's in a position to maybe compete for a playoff spot. Who knows? We don't know. But he's also in a position to help himself out for next year's draft if that's the direction that he chooses to go. And that's the difference between some owners in here and what Drew is doing. Some owners in here, they start 0-4 and they're just like, well, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. Okay, guys, it's me, Eeyore. That's some of you guys in this league, and you refuse to position yourselves better for the future while possibly maintaining flexibility for this year. And that's why Drew's 4-4 with 2 first-round picks, and some teams are 3-5 and just have all their picks or have no picks. You know, it's just a difference in a philosophy, and some people need a philosophical change, and we've been preaching that for a while. So, yeah, this is a big week for Drew. Let's see who he's got. He's got John. This could be the week that either really makes Drew want to make a push for the playoffs or make a push for the 2026 draft class, which he's already done. Like, Drew's ahead of a lot of owners because he has decided to make a concerted effort to position himself in next year's draft while maintaining flexibility to be competitive this year. So kudos to you, Drew. I think I speak for a lot of people in this league when I say that I have full confidence in your ability to, if you miss the playoffs this year, be right back in contention for it next year because you're a great owner. So, all right, let's get to the top 4 playoff teams here. We got Avery, which, wow, have things really worked out for Avery. Avery right now is carrying 4 running backs and basically just carrying 3 different running back rooms. He's carrying Jamal Williams, or I should say Javonte Williams, James Cook, Omarion Hampton, and Hassan Haskins. So basically, Avery is just riding Javonte Williams and James Cook right now until Omarion Hampton come back, which is probably week 13, and has been so blessed by those 2 running backs. Like, no injuries to those 2 guys whatsoever. Haven't left the game early. Knock on wood for you there, Avery. Although you play me this week, so it would be cool if both of them left early. JK. And then has gotten great quarterback play from Jackson Dart and Bo Nix. That Bo Nix trade is really working out for him. Not necessarily working out for John. And then up until last week, you had the tight end 1. Now he's the tight end 2 in Jake Ferguson. So those pieces have really worked out for you. What's really lacking for Avery is his wide receiver room right now. It's not pretty, man. Brandon Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, Zay Flowers, Romeo Doubs, Josh Downs. Like, that wide receiver room is so bad. Maybe the worst in the league. So it's tough because I was somebody that was banging on Avery's door earlier this year and saying, hey, are you ready to kind of make a move for 2026? And he said no. And look, Avery's been right. I don't know if that will lead to anything. You know, I will say if you got a shot to make the playoffs, you go for it, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you to tank over trying to make the playoffs in this league. You make the playoffs, you got a chance at money. And that's really what matters, what we're playing for, that and pride. But man, it is a pretty decent wide receiving class next year. And if Avery makes the playoffs, that positions his first outside of the top 8. And then when you get to like the 109 territory, it's anybody's guess as to what you're getting in the draft. So, you know, you got some pretty good wide receivers next year coming out in the draft. Chris Bell, Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate. There's a couple of other names. Mekhi Lemon. And I don't know if those guys will be available when Avery's drafting. Doesn't have a second round pick that could maybe help him move up in the first round. So, and like I said, not a lot of depth at running back. Like, he is really running on fumes at the running back position, just running Javonte and James Cook into the ground. And luckily, none of those guys have been injured. If one of those guys gets injured, every season is over for the most part because he doesn't have a backup running back. So, and like you don't have a wide receiver that anybody would want to trade for a running back unless you pick up like Bam Knight or something like that. So I don't know. Avery is a playoff team right now, but I have my doubts about that sticking for the long term. Although kudos to you for being here. You've made some good decisions, some that have worked out for you. But at some point, the lack of depth is really going to come into play. And this wide receiving room is so bad. Watch them score like 60 points against me tomorrow. Let's move up the ladder here. Donnie, God, do I really have to like what do I have to say about Donnie? Like just constant. Donnie is the constant in this league. Always in the playoffs, always making trades, always positioning himself. I gotta give Donnie super, super duper credit for the Michael Pittman trade. Just that was just totally off my radar. Traded Jaden Reed, Jalen Lane, and a third for Michael Pittman from Jeff. This was before the season in August. That's a great call by Donnie. I don't blame Jeff for making that trade whatsoever. And look, Jaden Reed is a nice piece to have to build for in the future. So not super mad at that. But Michael Pittman, man, like you could have gotten a lot more for him now than you could have in August. But I'm not saying anything there about Jeff. It's just a phenomenal trade by Donnie. Getting Keenan Allen, getting Devontae Adams. Donnie doesn't care about age. This week he went out and got Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs. Donnie's team is like basically a retirement home. And then like Nico Collins, right? So Alvin Kamara, Samaje Perine, just Travis Kelce, Joe Mixon, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, just old players, and then Dalton Kincaid and Nico Collins. So Donnie out here right now, 5-3. Who's he got this week? Donnie, you've got Javi. So that's going to be a good matchup, and that's going to really swing both of their seasons right here. Like if Javi gets a win this week, Javi's just going to do what Javi does and ride the fence. If Javi loses, maybe he decides to make a move for 2026. Doubt it, because that's not what Javi does. So that's a big matchup for this week. And if Donnie loses, does that let someone else that's on his tail, like a Drew, like a Jeff, like a Max, or like a Paul, who's down there at 3-5, but has a phenomenal team, does that give them some hope to get into the playoffs? So another great year by Donnie as he's making another push for the playoffs. It's like 1,700 years in a row. And look, Donnie does a phenomenal job of weaponizing his draft picks and then going and getting draft picks when he wants them. And I really think that, again, just like I talked about Drew, this is something that some owners could learn how to do. It's not the way that I operate, but I feel like do a good job at other things that make it so I don't have to do that. Like I don't like to trade my first round pick, and then if I want a player, have to go trade for one. It's just like not a process that I enjoy. But Donnie is really good at it. He does it every single year. Like right now, he only has a third round pick. And you know what? If there's a player that he's targeting in the first round, he will work his way back up into the draft next year to do it. And that's kudos to him. That's a skill. And I think other people should be trying to do that. And unfortunately, they're not. So take notes, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take a swig here. All right, we've got John at 5-3. Most points in the league. However, John has really suffered from a lack of depth the last few weeks. He has 3 losses in a row and has just not scored that many points. Derrick Henry has been kind of a letdown this year. Mike Evans, Christian McCaffrey. Like John really went all in. Like that is the definition of all in this year. And when it's working, it's really working. And you were 5-0, and it was really working. And then injuries happen, bye weeks happen, and then sometimes it's not even injuries to the players; it's like injuries to their ecosystem, like Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry without Lamar Jackson and having Cooper Rush at quarterback means teams can stack 8 in the box and stop Derrick Henry and make Cooper Rush beat them. So sometimes it's not that Derrick Henry is bad. It's just that there was an injury in Derrick Henry's ecosystem that affected Derrick Henry. You could say the same to Christian McCaffrey, although he still had some insane weeks. Like he had an RB1 week 2 weeks ago, but he had an RB9 week 3 weeks ago, an RB28 week last week. Like those are not the weeks you're looking for if you trade for Christian McCaffrey. You're looking for top 3, top 4, top 5. You're not satisfied if Christian McCaffrey gets an RB10 week. Puka Nacua has been phenomenal. But the problem really is when you get to the bottom of John's starting lineup and then you get to the depth, because there is really not a whole lot of depth on this roster. It's not as bad as other teams. Like you've got some players you could feel confident about flexing, like a Mark Andrews, like a Rashid Shaheed, who maybe has a new home in a few days. Like I'd probably feel okay flexing Marquise Brown, although last week he was terrible, but didn't really need him. By the way, you can drop DeAndre Hopkins if you want. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. My bad. Cut that out. Just kidding. So the depth is rough for John, and that's really why the last few weeks he has suffered some losses. He's had bye weeks, he's had injuries, and he's really not been able to complement the rest of his lineup with what the rest of his roster looks like. The problem with John is that he went all in, like all in. So for John to address some of those shortcomings, he's in the same situation as Jeff. He'd have to move one of his bigger pieces to get 2 or 3 or 4 pieces. And I just don't see John doing that right now. And I'm not advocating for John to do that, but like you don't have a first round pick. You don't have a second round pick. You don't have a third round pick. Ooh, my throat is dry here. Hang on, guys. You don't have a first, second, or third round pick to address these issues. So when you have injuries, when you have bye week fill-ins, Puka was down for a week or two. Puka left the game early. If Christian McCaffrey goes down, you're probably in a world of trouble. Brian Robinson probably gets 50% of the production that Christian McCaffrey does, and you just don't have the flexibility with the rest of your roster to pick that production up. And so John is kind of in the same position as Jeff. Like you got to hope all these starters work out and nobody gets hurt. Nobody leaves a game early or anything like that, because you just don't have the requisite depth or flexibility to address the depth in the middle of the season, unless you move a Puka Nacua to get 3 players or Christian McCaffrey or whoever it may be. And I don't foresee you doing that. So it is what it is. I will say it's been fun to see John be a competitive team for the last 2 years. He's kind of been the doormat of the league. John said he had a plan the whole time. I don't believe this was the plan. John kind of just knee-jerks and probably just knee-jerked into being able to get Puka Nacua, which then put him on a more competitive track. I don't blame him for it. So it's fun to see you be competitive, John. And it'll be really interesting to see what you do after the season, because you got no draft picks and some of your team is a little older than you'd like it to be competitive in 2026 and beyond. All right, let's get to my team here. So 7-1, 7th in points for, and last in points against, which I know is what everybody's going to hammer home. And that's fine. There's nothing I can do about it. All I can say about my team is that on a week-to-week basis, I position my team to be as competitive as possible. And that's what I was kind of trying to do to come into the year. I think a lot of people were calling me a tanking team. And I was telling you I'm not tanking. I'm just trying to kind of redevelop the team and see how the season goes. And if it goes well, I will have ample flexibility to improve the roster, or maybe I'll make good decisions via my draft or waiver wire pickups to help me out on a week-to-week basis. So, for example, last week I had the Kyler injury. I had Kyler was on a bye, but he's been injured for the few weeks before that. I had Trey McBride on a bye. I had Amon-Ra St. Brown on a bye. Ricky Pearsall out. So we are talking half of my starting lineup that I had projected to go into the season with, not being available for a week. the CJ Stroud plugin really saved me last week. And obviously I had two guys leave their games early, Cam Scadaboo and Luther Burden, but I was able to pick up Gunnar Helm off waivers, gave me 10 points. I was able to pick up Xavier Hutchinson off waivers, gave me 15 and a half points. So that's 25, 26 points that I picked up off waivers to kind of fill in that production. And then I had the monster game from CJ Stroud to really help me out. And then just stable production down the line for the most part, like 10 points from my defense, 10 points from Olave. I even got 10 points from Scadaboo before he left the game. 6 points from Kendrick Bourne, which I'll take in that circumstance. Kendrick Bourne, player that I traded with Donnie after him going nuclear against me, even though I think he was on the bench that week. So again, just being able to position myself however that may be, whether it's depth, waiver wire pickups, draft picks, trades, being able to be fluid on a week-to-week basis to put myself in a position to compete. That is all I'm trying to do. I am not going to beat anybody scoring 150 points. I think we all know that looking at my roster. But if I can score 120 points, like to me, 120 points is the line to where if I get beat and I score 120 points, I'm okay with that because I did my best. I put myself in a position to compete that week. We don't play defense. I can't stop the other team from scoring. So if the other team scores 150 points and I lose 150 to 130, it sucks that I had a good week, but there wasn't anything that I did wrong. My team did well, and I positioned myself in a spot to compete on a week-to-week basis. Last week, I only had 100 points, but I had half my team on a bye or an injury. The week before that, I had 126 points. The week before that, 126 points. I lost the week before that. The week before that, 110 points. The week before that, 140 points. The week before that, 132 points. The week before that, 112 points. So I am constantly putting my team in a position to score 120 to 130 points and see what the other team does. And so far, the other teams aren't scoring against me. There's nothing I can do about that. But all we can do is position ourselves to be as good as we can be on a week-to-week basis. And that does not only mean your starting lineup. That means your bench, your waiver wire moves, your ability to trade, your flexibility with draft picks. And I think that's what I've really done well this year is, hey, let's stream a defense this week. Let's stream a tight end. I got 10 points from a streaming tight end. That's really, really good in this league. So I'm 7-1. I still don't feel like I'm a lock to make the playoffs because I have a pretty interesting schedule. Let me pull up my schedule here real quick. After Avery, I have Javi, Justin. Those are two teams I do not take lightly. Jeff, although I only beat Jeff by 2 or 3 points the first week of the season. And then I have Paul and Drew, who are both still very much alive for playoff spots. So I think 5 of my next 6 games are going to be very, very challenging. I'm not saying, Jeff, you won't be challenging. You're not trying to win this year, and that's okay. So, I do have a 2-game advantage over everybody else, but I do not have the points advantage. So if I'm tied record-wise for a playoff spot, I would be eliminated via the points right now. So it's really cool to say I'm in the playoffs right now. I don't take any of this for granted. I'm having a lot of fun this year. I'm enjoying I think I drafted pretty well. I'm somebody that's very patient with the players that I draft. I'm very okay with Luther Burden not producing right now because I think he's going to be fine in the long term. I think Ricky Pearsall is going to be great when he gets back. Cam Scadaboo was looking like a running back 1 for the last few weeks, and I have Tyrone Tracy. I have the handcuff, so I feel okay there. Let's see what Trayvon Henderson does tomorrow. Torrey Horton, I'm considering starting Torrey Horton tomorrow because Cooper Kupp may be out, as well as Derek Young and Jake Bobo are out. So not a lot of depth for the Seahawks right now. I'm really excited about Terrence Ferguson's future, even though I have Trey McBride. So I'm really excited about the young players that I have. I think Jalen Royals will be a factor for the 49 for the Chiefs next year. I have 2 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks, excuse me, and a third-round pick. I can play around with those if I want to pick up maybe some players to help me win. So again, I think I practice what I preach, being the most competitive I can be while maintaining flexibility to address my team in the long term, in the future, and in the short term on a week-to-week basis, filling in injuries, filling in bye weeks, and making sure I feel the most competitive team I can on a week-to-week basis without getting ripped off on the trade market. So that's where we stand as a league. Really fun to kind of just sit here and take a look at the macro and some of the micro of certain teams in this league. Again, I really hate that I wasn't there last week to hang out with you guys, but maybe this will make up for it. Let me know your thoughts. I would love to know what you guys think about some of the individual critiques I have. Excuse me, whether you agree, disagree, no big deal. We're all here to just hang out and have some fun. And let's do it again. Maybe Donnie will get us a DTD weekly review.